Fireworks dominated the Nairobi gubernatorial debate held Monday night at Daystar University and hosted by KTN News. Miguna, Peter Kenneth, Senator Mike Mbuvi Sonko and Governor Evans Kidero faced off in a debate characterized by accusations and counter-accusations of incompetence, corruption and poor managerial skills, all with one common goal: to win the hearts of Nairobi residents for their choice of governor come August 8th. Tonight, the youth, health unionists and pundits have their say. Did the candidates effectively address all the issues? Do Nairobi residents now know their candidates better? That's up next on the round table with Sharon Mumanyi.
All right, and that's exactly what we want to do tonight here on the round table, to delve into that heated debate that took place here in Nairobi yesterday, where Nairobi residents got to interrogate what really the candidates, the gubernatorial candidates, have in store for them, how they plan to address the issues. And I have a very interesting panel with me tonight. Of course, I am sitting in for my colleague Asha Mwilu, who's away today. So let me just introduce to you the panel that we have on the round table tonight. I will begin with a good lady on my left. Nerima Wako is the Executive Director of Siasa Place. Many thanks for joining us. I will then go to my right. We have Vincent Kimosop, who is a policy and governance expert. Many thanks for joining us. Right in front of me is Javas Bigambo, not a new face to KTN, a governance expert. Many thanks for joining us again. And we also have Victor Ngani, who's a founding chairman and a health expert, I should say, here in Nairobi. Many thanks for joining us. So we want to delve into that particular debate that took place yesterday. Of course, the voices we have on the table here, representative of the youth, of governance experts and health, which is a very critical issue. Today we are facing, it's the 30th day of the nurses' strike, of course, so very critical issues to discuss. But first, let's just take a snippet into some of the things that were said yesterday by taking a look at some of the soundbites from yesterday.
If we make the right decision, Nairobi will rise and will prosper and will be like any other major city in the world.
Nairobians are the highest taxpayers in East and Central Africa. They deserve to have good roads. They deserve to have a clean city. They deserve to have a city that has no traffic congestion. They deserve to have a city that has no water shortage.
Nairobi is too important a city. With 50% of our GDP of the whole country in Nairobi, it requires a serious manager with a proven track record.
I have done the much I can. We have laid a foundation on which we are ready to take off. And I can assure you that I now know where all the potholes are, and I'm asking Nairobians to give me an opportunity to build on the foundations that I've laid.
All right, so many things have been said about this debate yesterday, from it being comical. It's one of the words that were used, to it being, you know, a name-calling kind of a charade. Kimosop, I'll start with you. what's your gauge of that debate yesterday?
Thanks, Sharon, for having me. I think for me, being an optimist, that I'm very proud of what KTN and its partners were able to achieve in terms of bringing these candidates to the fore and really getting to hear them as they think on their feet and asking questions that are pertinent to Kenyans. So, and I am happy that these are opportunities that we have gotten as a result of the constitution, rolling down of devolution, and really strengthening the whole issue of an interface between the people who've been bestowed with power and holding them into account. So in my view, it was good. We were able to know their perspective, what is their philosophy in terms of development, and also be able to see what are the other new ideas that those who are seeking offices would offer. So for me, I was impressed.
Right.
And as a resident, I think I can be able to say that I know who is worthy of being entrusted with the responsibility of managing our affairs. It improved the decision, but I am happy that I was able to see this and really know who is better placed to manage Nairobi.
Okay, Nerima, I wonder if you're as impressed as Kimosop is, because it was a good platform. Some people say, while good questions were asked, not so many of them were effectively answered. What did you feel about that?
Absolutely. As Kimosop was speaking, I was finding it difficult to believe I was watching the same debate, because to me, when it ended, I was more confused. I didn't quite know who to vote for as governor. And as the fact that there were only 4 standing there, I believe that we have more candidates who are vying for the position of governor in our city. I think there are about 6, but we only had 4. And even speaking on the point that there was a lot of name calling. A lot of my friends have said that they thought it was the Churchill show and it was a comedy. And the fact that there was also a lot of insults, I feel like there was a lot more noise than solutions in that debate.
But specific questions were asked with regard to, ease of doing business in Nairobi, state of employment for the youth. Do you think they just waltzed by these questions, or they were too involved in other things to answer this?
I think that they wasted more time accusing one another, because even when questions were asked, there was one point that Sonko was asked whether he has the capability to rule, and he talked about graduating from Kemu. And then Miguna in the background was saying, something like, that's not the question. And so a lot of the times we mostly had the buzzer. So a lot of us just had that noise constantly. And even when it came to solutions, their solutions were not quite detailed because they didn't have time to go into the details. Or perhaps maybe they don't quite know what the details are. I would have liked to see, perhaps if you have a solution, how are you going to be able to cost or have the finance to be able to have that solution? But when you throw out ideas, like, for instance, when they talked about the garbage collection and Peter Kenneth talked about landfills and then just left it at that, I mean, it makes you beg to question,
like
have you done research? Yeah, you've just rubbed the surface. In fact, even when Miguna talked about Wi-Fi and free internet for the youth, and there was a lot of jubilant noise, but how is that going to happen? Have you thought about the infrastructure in terms of ICT in our city? Are we capable of having that in the next 4.5 years? If Kidero is saying that he has now learned the potholes, and for Peter Kenneth to say it took you too long to learn, why should we believe in you in bringing new solutions?
And he was very proud to have learned about the potholes it would do.
Very
proud. I wish I can get a rebuttal the way it was said yesterday. I think maybe because of the background I come in, I'm able to distill between the politics and the policy directives from the pronouncements. Because you will always have, Mirema, the political noise. That you can even see even at the national level. But if you listen carefully, you're able to distill what is the policy direction. Because at this point...
Okay. And we'll talk about the specific kind of areas that were covered and to distill what kind of policy you were able to, to get out of the chaff. And just, Javas, if we were to gauge individual performance of these 4 candidates, how would you rate them? Who impressed you the most, if any?
Wow. Well, sitting in this chair tonight around this round table, I would be very charitable with my, understanding and grading of the performance last night, because really, if we were to score them by way of their performance last night, beyond the comic relief by which they excited many observers around the country and even in the diaspora, then I think my charity of that grading would not extend beyond a 3 out of 10.
To all of them?
To all of them. Now, I'll tell you this, without batting an eye, that it came out clear to me, sitting watching that entire interview from the beginning to the closure of it, that these candidates were not fully prepared by their handlers. And many critical issues were left afloat. In fact, many did not even venture into or delve into the critical issues. Yes, we're going into that discussion. However, I think these candidates needed to have brought themselves to a critical appreciation that those who are watching this debate were people who would want to determine whom to vote for or to vote against by way of their pronouncements.
But, this wasn't a joint race, as it were. And out of the 4, you were disappointed, by their joint performance. Well, but is there anyone who at least tried to be?
I'll say this, and I hold no brief for anyone. I'll say this, that, for instance, when it comes to candidate Peter Kenneth, He is well spoken and looked, though he looked a bit confused in the whole haze, because having been a presidential candidate before, I expected a sterling performance of Peter Kenneth.
Do you feel that maybe he was overwhelmed by some of the accusations that were being lodged his way?
Overwhelmed? Well, I wouldn't say so, because having toured the presidential debate agora, I think it would have been proper for him then to bring in that sobriety that he wanted to bring to the nation as president. When you look at candidate Miguna, of course, they say give the devil his due. Of all the candidates, he came keen on the specifics of what he would deliver. And in fact, armed with even
bullying
a
was bullying one of the specifics.
However, I think one would say that he
because
was...
some people have talked about it actually being a strategy. I don't know what you think,
Yes.
Daktari, that he was pulling up, the trump card, so to speak, that, just bog everybody down, with a stance that's almost arrogant, so to speak.
Actually, he was riding on the air of buoyancy, the buoyancy of arrogance. It was what was holding him. In fact, I think his handlers need to see how to polish him up a bit. He's got the stuff. But that arrogance will, in fact, glaciate all the votes. When you look at, for example, Mike Sonko.
He seemed to have rallied the emotions of and...
Yes, he's a rabble-rouser, Miguna. But now when you look at somebody like candidate Sonko. Sonko, of course, coming in, knowing that he wanted to bring in the simplistic approach and being a candidate of the people, he did his best. And even some of the one-liners that he threw in, and he was a bit impressive to that extent. But when it comes to issues, just a minute. To the extent of the audience he wanted to address. But when it comes to the issues that Sonko was addressing as a possible governor of Nairobi, actually he was not impressive.
All right. I'll come to you, Kimo. So I just want to talk to Daktari, and because I know we'll talk about health issues at some point in this discussion. But as a resident of Nairobi, what was your take-home from this debate?
Well, mine is broad-ranging. First and foremost, the concept of debates in this democracy is a nascent issue. It's not something we've been doing for a long time. I think then to put together such an event and have participants participate in it without too much history, for me is a very positive thing. And for that, I think everybody deserves applause, including the potential candidates. The striking issue was the level of accusations touching on the fundamental matter of integrity. I think for me, that sort of muddies the whole debate, because at the very core of a leader, we have to have integrity. Now, looking across board, you find that there's an integrity question touching on each and every individual.
Right.
Now, if we set aside the integrity issues, then the other glaring, I think, negative, before I come to the positives, is the level of insults, basically, a kind of language that you didn't want to watch with your children.
Right.
And I thought that for leadership at that level, to allow yourselves to get into the gutter that far, I mean, even speak of, people's spouses and so on.
Right.
Yeah, I think that was, it was a bit of a disappointment.
Degenerating into something else.
However, we have to give it to them, because leadership is not easy. And to put yourself out there, to be scrutinized by every Tom, Dick and Harry across the board, for people to look at you and say you can't, despite perhaps even a string of achievements in their respective areas of society, I think it's a positive thing. And if we could get past the Chapter 6 issues of integrity, and perhaps they would understand the need to foster improved moral fabric in this society to be good leaders, that will be a good thing.
Right.
One of my take-home messages, and I think it's something that the whole of Nairobi took, is a question that was asked: who amongst these people can you trust with your child? Now, I think that's a very important question. It brings it back home. And look at the candidate. You may look at your tribesman whom you wanted to vote for, or your party man, and you ask yourself, is this the kind of person I want my child to hang around?
Right.
And if your answer is no, there is your answer. And, things are changing. People are having different opinions already.
And that's how I was talking about the issue of... I think before I even respond to this, I want to say something...
I remember you had a burning rejoinder.
Why I was concerned, for example, Mike Sonko, during the debate, confessed that he will be in charge of the political wing of the county. These are his own words. And he will leave the technocratic management of the county to his deputy. You know very well that when we go to the ballot, we will be electing a governor, somebody we will hold into account on every issue, not only on the political. So I think the handlers,
that was a failure. Was it a misrepresentation on his part?
You can imagine it's like you, if you come to this show and we take over, your boss is going to ask it.
And my boss was actually, moderating that, asking that are you confessing that this your deputy will be the governor?
That was a wrong pronunciation on the part of Sonko. The reason why I said I'm impressed is that I'm a firm believer on the fundamentals of leadership, one which has been raised by my colleague here, the issue of integrity. If you looked at the heart and the core of the conversation, people went back to the issue of integrity, telling you not all is lost on the issue of Chapter 6. For me, that was a key issue. Number two is that I did not get to see anything that was so differentiating of all the candidates. For example, when you compare Nairobi and the rest of the world, what kind of a city do I want to be remembered for? As in, look at the basics in Nairobi. I was looking at Kidero, for example. If I was his advisor, one thing that he would have been remembered is not only dealing with the hardware, but also dealing with the issue of the software. Like, if you only said we set one day apart in the last 4 years, that let us clean up the city. Like the way, what is the name? The former clerk of Nairobi was remembered for cleaning Nairobi. John Mishuki, for example. So those are the things that I did not see, which tells very much about the capacity
of Kidero,
of the people.
Kimosop, he's the incumbent. And naturally, so many of the accusations fell on his laps because the misdoings you'd expect is falling squarely on his laps. Do you think he was rather calm in the face of all these accusations that were for him, and as such, perhaps even managed to gain some confidence of some of the...
It was a strategy.
Right?
With the benefit of oath of office that he has, with the benefit of incumbency, much as it comes with in a twin curse, the thing is this. Governor Kidero, in his responses yesterday, except to the reference and the specifics of the law, which actually is the only candidate who was very keen on the provisions, various provisions, and that's kudos for him. He did not come out strongly as somebody who has authoritatively led a city for the past 4.5 years. One would have expected that he came out...
Complete with a soundbite to that effect.
Exactly, because the thing is this. Look, you don't take chances. This is Nairobi. One thing that even his handlers would have asked themselves as they were preparing or prepping him for this debate is, how do we want to build a safer city in Nairobi amongst safer cities in the world? For example, if, much as he said that yes, the city has received greater ratings in the recent years, etc., but where does he want to be seen as the vision bearer of this city for the time that he has been, and granted another opportunity, another term, that in 10 years, where would it be said that during the time of Governor Kidero, the city moved or shifted from point A to point B? Because if it's about that, for example, yesterday he would have spoken to some of the issues like, one, automation of revenue collection. To what extent has it improved or made Nairobi better? And part of the revenue that has been collected, how have they expended it in terms of making Nairobi better? Nairobi used to be the called or termed, fairly, impressively so, as the city in the sun. Today, could we say that Nairobi is still that city in the sun?
Well, he spoke to the use of the county resources, saying that they're used for recurrent expenditures, paying salaries. It seemed that there was little or nothing left for development, is what we're kind of hearing. And I don't know, as youth, did you hear a representation of what the young people, who are really the majority of the voters in the county, that they would resonate with in any or all of these leaders yesterday?
I think what the young people wanted to hear was more, they touched it a bit on the hawking, because a lot of young people depend on Gikomba, and a lot of them have stalls with second-hand clothes. And so having tried to go to Gikomba, it's almost inaccessible when we're talking about even a road, and sanitation. We have heaps and heaps of garbage, and sewage. People are even crossing almost, it looks like a river, just to get to something that you use for your upkeep.
Right.
So I think for a lot of young people, what was important to yesterday was the fact that they wanted to hear, how are you going to help me? Because Sonko touched it a bit when he talked about, you know, reducing licenses or removing licenses from mamambogas and hawkers and all that, and having a space for them to be able to sell their goods. But one thing that I have to say that Sonko did was the fact that he said that this administration has put a lot of taxes on the people, high taxes. And it was interesting to me because you're senator. So it was like, but this is also part of your team at the same time that you're criticizing.
Actually, or conduct oversight for that matter.
Yeah.
Javas.
And that's why some of the issues that missed, despite the good questions that were asked, for example, and tying it to the issue that Narima has indicated.
Right.
One, in the past 4 years, how many times have we had a fire at Gikomba and at many other places? How prepared is this city in terms of risk management? Such kind of issues are very critical.
Right.
Because while we know very well that every governor or every candidate is talking about management of traffic jam, every city in the world has got some traffic jam. And the more we become a greater city, the more traffic we get to have. Much as we need solutions for that.
Sonko spoke about some documents he presented that has a formula for dealing with this, I think.
You see, Sharon, when you are in the place of making a difference, I think one of the things for me that was very clear is that some senators have not understood really what their role is in terms of facilitating devolution. And you can see most of them are crossing over to become governors.
Right.
When you read the Constitution, the senator is a representative of the county government in Parliament. So meaning that the articulation of issues regarding Nairobi City County should actually be done at the national level by the Senator Sonko.
Right.
So that competition, fighting each other, was actually a disservice, in my view, to the advancement of the interests of Nairobi City. Now, another thing that I want to raise that I thought Kidero should have raised to his advantage, I think one thing I would commend, and I'll give him a credit for this, is that he's managed a very good cordial relationship with the national government, because a city or authority has to have good relationship with the national government to facilitate 60% GDP management. I think of all, that's something, even though he was elected on an ODM ticket with the president on a different, that's something he should have brought out yesterday and shown how it has played a big role in facilitating Nairobi. Another issue is also the whole aspect of laying a good foundation and transiting the county from a city, to what we call a Nairobi City Council, to a whole fully fledged government. So for me, when I look at Kidero, I think his handlers, as Javas has pointed out, is that he missed a critical opportunity to project really the reasons why he deserves another chance. For example, we know corruption is an issue. And he did not even defend himself on that.
And we want to take a break on that note, because speaking about corruption, there's one word that, you know, we had so many times in that debate, cartels. We'll come back and talk about that, because he was also accused in that particular platform. But right now we want to take a short break. Don't go too far. We have to talk about particular issues regarding health, youth employment, and the ease of doing business in Nairobi. When we return, don't go too far.
This is KTN News.